Hi, we are outside, so enjoy the very fluffy mic in my face. I figured it would be nice to take advantage of a nice warm day because it's, the middle of January and I can do that. In the spirit of the new year, Costube has decided to do a skill swap. Each of us participating will be learning a new skill from someone else in the Costube community. I decided I would focus on a technique that isn't normally something I do and learn something of it. So Catherine Sutton has been wonderful and offered to teach me how to cable knit, and in return I taught her null binding. Her video on null binding is already up, and we're going to watch my lessons and learning how to knit now.
Hi, my name's Catherine, and I do a lot of sewing as well as some knitting and embroidery. I have a YouTube channel under my name, Catherine Sutton, and my Instagram account is crystal_pegasus_costumes. As you said, we're here to talk about cable knitting. So I've got a few examples to show you. So the first one I have is this green scarf. So you can see what we mean by cable. It's not the tool with which we do the knitting, it's the style of knitting achieved and the fact that it ends up at these sort of rope-like structures that twist around each other. I also have another sample. So this is a double, so a little cornier. And one final thing to show you is it doesn't have to just be scarves, and it's often used in jumpers and vests and that sort of thing. And you can also even just use it on the edge as decoration. So this is a hood.
I love that hood so much.
Probably looks a bit weird with all my knitted red things on together, but so we've got a cabled edge and then just plain knitting around the back. I have some little samples, and so most of them, apart from this one, are all the same pattern. Well, this one I knit, I made this a year or two ago when I was playing. So this is in an acrylic. This is in an 8-ply wool yarn. This one is 70% baby alpaca, and so it's really soft and fluffy. We've got a little fingering weight yarn down here, so it might be a bit too dark to see, but it's little and light. And in person, you can see the cables pretty well. This one's a cotton. So you can see that in the cotton, it really is very distinct.
It is.
Because the yarn really holds its structure more, and is sort of smooth and flowy. Whereas with the wool or the alpaca, it gets really soft and snuggly. So you can get all different feels from your different end product, not just with what you do, such as the cable, but with what you choose to use. And then I also included this little sample, which is the wheatia. So this is the same yarn, same 8-ply wool yarn as here, and that's the wheatia design. That's the sort of different options you have when choosing what you're going to go for. You can get different results. So that's a little bit of intro and what we're aiming for. You ready to get going yourself?
I am. I'm so excited.
And you're actually ahead of me. You've cast on already, and I did not do that. So I will do that now. So the first step, the casting on a sample. So to make this, the first step is to cast on 23 stitches. And I'm just going to do a simple loose cast on. What sort of cast on do you like to do?
I do the simple, let me grab a scrap bit of yarn that I have because I just accumulate those. Benefits of being a null binder, you work in short lengths, and so you kind of just have little bits of yarn surrounding you.
Mm.
So
I do, working through the camera is really weird right now. I just do that under and then over to form the loop, and then I tighten with my thumb and my index.
Lovely. I think this is probably the first one I learned, and so it's what I've always been comfortable with, just the stitching it on as if you're doing another stitch.
I've never seen that before, and I think that's really cool. I learned from my grandma, and that this is just how she taught me to cast on.
So what is your knitting history? So you learnt from your grandma?
Yeah. And then I moved across states, and so she was super far away, so I couldn't learn much from her other than the knit stitch. And so I just made scarves with just knit for about 3 years, and then finally I was just like,
I'm ready for more.
And so I learned how to purl while doing that, and that's where I am at now.
So have you done any hats or things like that, or just a solid scarf kind of gal?
Just a solid scarf and a single sock. I haven't made the pair for it yet.
Okay, so we've now both cast on, and we're just going to warm up. So we have several rows that we can just get in the zone before we have to actually get on with the cabling. So we've knit 1 and then purl 2. So we're bringing the yarn between the 2 needles to get into the purl position and purling 2 stitches. Then we're transferring the yarn back behind into the knit position, and now we're knitting 6 stitches. That's a tongue twister.
Gotta say that 3 times fast.
So if we're looking at the sample that we're building towards making, those 6 knit stitches are going to form the 6 stitches in our right cable. We go back and we knit 2.
It said knit 6, purl 2, and then knit 1.
I did purl, I said knit, even though my hands knew what to do, just not my mouth.
Right, that's why I got confused and checked the pattern.
No. Yeah. So you've purled 2?
Purl 2, knit 1, and then purl 2 more, and then...
Yeah. So knit 1, and that knit 1, it will be this center little line in the sample. Purl 2. And then we're ready for another 6 knit stitches. So now bring the yarn forward into the purl position and purl 2.
And then knit 1.
Yeah. The moment of truth. Time for row 5 that has the cabling in it.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
So how about first of all, grab out your cable needles and have a look at them. So what we note is that, so I'm going to recommend you go with that silver one that you first got, because that's the sort I like.
All right.
One thing to think about is to ensure that your cable size is either the same size as the needle you're knitting with, or you're potentially smaller. That smaller is fine. But you've got to be sure that you're not using a larger cable than your knitting needle, because then the stitches won't go through very easily. So I have 2 little ones here, a 4mm and a 2.5 millimeter, not milliliter. It don't contain any liquid whatsoever. Okay, so let's give this a go. The first 3 stitches are perfectly normal. The first 3 stitches are just knit 1, purl 2. Make sure your yarn is in the knit position and hold your knitting in your left hand. So then we're going to take our cable needle and we're going to pass 3 of the stitches, and we're not going to let that one drop out. So you might need to put that second one up. We're going to pass 3 of the stitches onto the cable needle. Lovely. So you want to be taking them off the main needle. Have them in the middle of your cable needle, so they're nice and contained. Make sure the cable needle is sitting behind the rest of it. And then you can kind of just let it go for a second. And we're back to being able to knit. So then we knit 3 stitches as normal, just from the left needle onto the right needle. 1, 2, 3. So now what I recommend you do is make sure you push your stitches on the left needle down a bit so that they're not going to fall off. And pick up your cable needle. So make sure that we've oriented it such that it's not twisted over or anything. We just want it sitting nice and flat. The 3 stitches that we took are now going to travel to the end to be able to be knitted off that end over there.
Okay.
Yes. We're at this end of the cable needle. Yep. Lovely. So now knit off the cable needle onto your right needle. You've just done your first cable. Congratulations. Beautiful.
I see it already. Oh my gosh, I'm so good.
Make sure that when you're carrying them, you're not picking them up as if to knit. You're picking them up from behind so that they're just sitting on the needle as if they're following along a longer, if this needle was a continuation of this needle.
With all of that in mind, Catherine and I parted ways to work on our respective swatches. I didn't get any footage of that, but I did get footage of the Everglades, and you can look at some gators and imagine I'm knitting while doing this whole thing.
First 3 rows of cable on this little swatch I've been working with. The color makes it really hard to see the pattern, let me tell you that.
Yes, I think that's something to keep in mind of, well, the benefit of swatches when you're going to do something, particularly when it's got a pattern, it's good to test it to make sure that the pattern shows up, because it is much easier to see on that little plain swatch you've got there.
Yeah. And this, you can tell where I messed up too.
So I guess, well, one option for your scarf is you could just keep going with that one that you've got.
Yeah, it's not a super wide scarf, but I think it fits with, living in Texas and not really having to worry about warmth that much.
Yeah. But we did talk about designing a scarf as well. Is that something you're still keen for? To do in the grey maybe, to show it off more?
Right, because I've got quite a few schemes of this.
Lovely. And when you compare the two, were they done on the same size needles?
They were.
Yep. And yarns do vary even if they're on the same size needles. Are they lining up pretty much in size?
No. 2 repeats on this is actually 3 on this.
Aha. So that's good to know. So when you were talking about the multicolored one, you said it's a bit narrow.
Yeah.
So what size would you ideally want from this grey scarf?
I'm not sure. because I generally like the wider ones, even though it's not necessarily like the most conducive to the weather I live in. I just like to be cozy.
Cool. And I guess it then depends what you want to do. So so perhaps give me a measurement. How wide are we talking? How wide is your sample there? And how wide would you like it to be?
So this sample, probably when I stretch it out a little bit more, it ends up at around 8 inches or so. And what I was thinking would be maybe 12 or 13 inches wide.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you got the bit of flexibility that it'll be what it is, but so we can aim for some 1.5 times that. However, just jotting that down, your scarf doesn't have to be this repeated over and over.
Catherine and I then discussed what I wanted out of my scarf and worked up a design that's a little different from the swatch tests that we originally did. So, Catherine just sent me the knitting pattern for this final scarf. So I've got the pattern pulled up over here. Let's cast on and see what we can do. Hopefully I don't have to wrangle a cat too much. She's eyeing me already. So there we have it. I learned how to cable knit. Obviously I haven't gotten much done yet. I knit very slowly and it's been a fairly busy new year. But I'm really proud of the progress I've made, especially because I went from not knowing how to read a knitting pattern and not knowing how to cable to knowing both of those things, which was super new for me. Thank you so much for watching this. I know it's out of the normal for me. We will have more medieval content very soon, and just remember to follow me on Instagram. I also have a TikTok if you want to see me shitposting in my medieval clothing. And if you want to support the channel, I've got a coffee link in my description, and that will just help me with the fabric fund. Thank you so much. I'll see you next month.